This is the tea we use for what Americans might call a health boost or a detox drink. Hello, I'm Sarah, and I am on a mission to uncover all the hidden health hazards that our daily habits might be brewing up. And one of those hazards pertains to tea, or as it's known in Britain, tea. It means the same. And of course, as a certified health enthusiast, I've done my fair bit of research, right? Just off the top of my head, I've looked into green tea, black tea, and I think from that I've sipped quite a few cups. So I know what I'm talking about. But when it comes to tea consumption, whether you're just looking for a quick pick-me-up or something soothing, it is worth learning that not all teas are as innocent as they seem. And so without further ado, let's metaphorically steep ourselves in knowledge as I uncover ways that certain teas might be quietly damaging your brain after 65. When I was out there for the first time in the world of wellness, living the tea-drinking lifestyle in my golden years, the first confusing thing that I noticed is that detox teas, and as it turns out many others, insist upon messing with our bodies in ways we don't expect. Sarah, what do you mean by that? Well, here's how detox teas work. We'll get into specifics later. In Britain and America alike, the tea aisle where I enter the supermarket and speak to the clerk and ask them if they have any caffeine-free options is known as a health haven. When you pick up a detox tea, you might press the brew button thinking you're doing something good for your body. Nobody would ever suspect otherwise, or would they? In reality, it is a little bit different because that same detox tea where I thought I was cleansing my system and feeling rejuvenated might actually be causing more harm than good. And this is where those hidden health hazards really take shape. Or should I say size? Because there's one key rule. On the whole, detox teas tend to be more potent than their regular counterparts. And the reason for this, as we all know, is that they're marketed as a quick fix. But it's also because our bodies after 65 are about 40 times more sensitive to certain ingredients. And so we just sort of absorb things differently, in fact, awkwardly. A tiny cup of detox tea was where I first met my nemesis, dehydration. I was drinking it in a room about the size of this studio, which surprisingly, given that I am often dubbed America's finest health guru, is not that big. And at the best of times, I don't like being in close proximity to discomfort. But being squashed by the effects of excessive caffeine and natural laxatives was the second most horrifying experience of my life. And I know what you're thinking. Oops, Sarah, what was the first? Being squashed by the realization that my healthy habit was actually harmful. You see, detox teas like fad diets or miracle cures or quick fixes themselves are just bigger promises. I mean, they'd have to be, right? Especially given what we've discovered on this channel about the differences in how our bodies process things after 65. And of course, a cup of tea is not the only place where you'd find hidden dangers. In addition to detox teas, there's licorice root tea, black tea, and in desperate times, artificially sweetened herbal teas, which should prompt nobody to ask me about the aspartame incident of 2018. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, Sarah, the British love their tea with separate milk and sugar. Well, firstly, that's not always true. And secondly, that's not where I was going with this. I was actually gonna mention the hidden sugars because while in America, bottled iced teas and their sugar content are more or less obvious, this is often not the case in Britain. To go from a healthy drink to a sugary trap, you often have to kind of step up your label reading game because the sugar content is higher up than you expect. There's one thing to remember. This getting into tea drinking habits, but getting out when your brain health is at stake, it could lead to an unintentionally serious health situation. In fact, I do have footage, but I couldn't show it on here because I get hundreds of complaints and an equal number of concerned messages. So just take my word for it. Licorice root tea is of course found in many places and through much of our daily lives, but never more do I need to warn about it than when I am talking about brain health after 65. So because of this, it is worth remembering some of the key differences between occasional consumption and regular intake. Don't take my word for it. Instead, Listen to me from last year. It was once said by me in just a second from now that you can tell a lot about a tea by the size of its effects. And given its unparalleled record of boasting larger health claims than everyone else, licorice root tea might fancy its chances of winning the My Tea's Healthier Than Your Tea debate. But the truth is, and you might find this shocking, licorice root tea in large quantities can be harmful. You can't talk about licorice root tea without talking about glycyrrhizin. Glycyrrhizin is the compound that gives licorice its sweet taste and keeps the tea attached to our taste buds like a docked ship. And the only reason I made a nautical sim there was to draw your attention to the miniature warning sign I made from licorice root tea boxes while I was bored. Anyway, there are several key differences in this department. On licorice root tea, the effects are ever so slightly stronger and crucially more impactful. This makes them sturdier and impossible to ignore. How do I know that? Because I was 65 once. But whereas licorice root tea, that is glycyrrhizin-containing tea, is decidedly potent, that's not always the case with other teas. Sure, black tea, the one whose caffeine content looks like surprised eyes, definitely does have strong effects. But herbal teas, which are easily the more outgoing and competitive of the two, are often seen as harmless due to the manner in which each country markets these products. There's also a difference in how they affect our bodies. In Britain, the effects linger vertically in our system, thus making it harder to flush out by drinking water. And the horizontal impact of American bottled iced teas means that you can do this in theory, but it's not recommended. One of the biggest concerns for Americans and Brits alike, aside from being forced to give up their favorite brew, is the great tea and brain health divide. In Britain, tea consumption is categorized as a national pastime while it is generally seen as a health trend in the U.S. Moreover, British tea drinking operates on a social frequency and America on a wellness one. What does all of this mean? Well, let's just say that you want to enjoy your tea after 65, but it doesn't run on brain-friendly ingredients, is not caffeine-free, or is incompatible with your medication. In that instance, you'll need to run to the health food store to pick up some alternatives. An alternative will convert your tea habit from potentially harmful to brain boosting. In the event that your alternative doesn't come with a flavor you enjoy, be sure to also pick up some natural sweeteners. These sweeteners are magic. They allow you to turn your potentially harmful tea into a brain-friendly beverage. For Brits visiting America, the same applies but in reverse. A step towards healthier choices might also be needed to safely enjoy tea in the US. Both are widely available for Americans and Brits in health food stores. I'd say the most obvious difference between British and American tea habits is the temperature. When I first stayed in America, I couldn't believe how cool their iced tea was, and not in a Morgan Freeman type way. I mean, this was a Lipton, I just mean it was refrigerated, but in Britain, you don't usually have that problem and or luxury because a significant amount of British tea is either not iced or not iced well. This is a particular problem when you're trying to cut down on caffeine intake after 65. As with many areas of life, teas are their own subgenre of British versus American word differences. Take, for instance, the name that we assign to that helpful tea that helps you with your digestion when you are feeling bloated. In Britain and much of the rest of the world, this tea is known as peppermint tea. This is the word we use for what Americans might call a digestive aid or a tummy soother. Also, whether it's situated on the top or the bottom shelf, Brits and Americans also can't agree on what you call that area of the supermarket that you enter to buy tea. Upon entering Britain, we usually opt for the word tea aisle. Please note that Americans, just like patrons in my most recent secret live stream, are divided on whether this should be pronounced tea section or beverage aisle. Either way, Americans will often call this area the coffee and tea section. More often than not, Brits will call an herbal tea a tisane. Americans will call a tisane an herbal tea. While Americans have about 100 words for a sweetened iced tea. Chief among these are sweet tea, iced tea, cold brew tea, or sun tea, and finally, bubble tea. This is something I've encountered far more in the United States than I have in Britain. This is a tea-based drink often served cold with chewy tapioca pearls, but the use of bubble might be confusing to some Brits. You might think of bubbles as something in a bath, a fine example of which is the character of Jeeves from P.G. Wodehouse Jeeves and Wooster novels that I somehow keep mentioning in my videos just by coincidence. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments below some of the tea differences that you've encountered. I'm Sarah Brown. You can follow me on Twitter at Lost in the Teacup, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the tea leaves. Thank you to my patrons for literally making this video happen. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so today at Patreon.com or Healthy Tea Life. Until the next video, goodbye.